This is the Hofstra Radio Alumni Audio Yearbook. Today is July 19th, 2024. Please tell us your name and the years you were at Hofstra Radio.
So my name is Jasmine Jones, and I was part of the Hofstra Radio from 2016 to 2019.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us and taking some time to share your stories. If you could you tell us what shows or programs or departments you worked on at the station?
I was the co-producer for the Electro Beat Show, which is one of the EDM shows that we had at the station. And then I also was a part of the internet station that we had, Required Radio. I was the president of that, uh, which was kind of like a side thing, but but nonetheless.
I don't know anything about this, so tell me more. What was required radio?
So in the early days of Required Radio, one of our professors, so I was a radio production major, and one of our professors wanted to get into the internet radio and podcasting space. And back in this time, a lot of people weren't really for podcasting, or they just didn't know a lot about it. And while I was doing my thing at WHU, I wanted to, go down that route and just explore what that could be, and have like our projects last forever online, kind of like what we're doing right now.
Hmm.
And so now they have a whole podcast thing online, and it kind of just blew up after I left, to be honest.
Wow, so this was entirely separate from WRHU.
Yeah, it was separate, but we kind of like worked together, and we used the same studios and everything like that as well. But I did both that and WHU.
Okay. And one last question. I'm sure I have more, but was this born out of a class, or was this an extracurricular thing that sort of developed on its own?
Yeah, I think it was born out of a class. My professor that convinced me to long story, but my professor that convinced me to actually just do radio in general, like do WHU and everything, he was the one that had originally started it out of a class before I even came to the school. And it kind of like died a little bit, and no one was doing anything with it. And then he asked me to do something with it. And then I don't know, I just kinda took it and made it a thing, and, there's, like, interviews and stuff like that online, about it, and now my face is plastered on the wall of the school, so, because of that, and, so that's kinda how that started.
Well, that's cool. Who was the professor?
Professor Quinn, I'm not sure if he still is there, but
Okay.
he's the reason why I even started doing that.
Okay. Well, I always like to give credit where credit is due. If someone pushes you into this radio world for good or bad, I like to know who's
Yeah.
responsible for those things. I guess I'll skip to this question. It's usually a two-part question. I like to know what brings people to the radio station, and if you could describe what it was like when you first encountered WRHU.
I actually was very, I'm not sure why, but, like, I probably don't sound like it right now, but I was super, what's the word I'm looking for? I was just, like, really inward, introverted type person,
Hmm.
and, I'm originally from North Carolina, and I moved myself to New York, didn't know absolutely anyone, and so I kinda just was even more introverted, and then in my radio classes, I just wanted to be that person behind the scenes, the person engineering everything, producing everything. I didn't actually wanna be on air, and, but I was one of those people that always raised their hand in class and had something to say.
Hmm.
And, I remember, Mario, Professor Mario, he was telling me, Jasmine, you should just try out for WHU. Like, you should go into the class and be on air because you have a lot to say." And I was like, well, I don't think this is for me, whatever. And then I kind of just did it anyways. You know, when you just have someone in your life that kind of sees your potential before you see your potential, and then,
Hmm.
like it was like one of those moments. And I'm so grateful for that because it really played a huge part in my current career and, like, where I've gone since then and everything, but, like, that was the defining moment of me getting into WHU, and, honestly, like, it was the best experience I could have actually asked for, and I probably didn't appreciate it enough when I was going through it, but I'm so grateful for, those early days and everything that I learned.
Well, before I let you answer more of this, I want to double back again. So, when you chose Hofstra University,
Mhm.
did you have the radio station in mind? Were you aware of the radio station?
Yeah, I was aware of the radio station. I chose Hofstra because I wanted to be an audio engineer and I loved the program and the classes that were required for that. And I had wanted to go to a different school, like, closer to home, and but I really knew that I don't know, I had, like, this gut feeling in my stomach that I was supposed to be in New York, and so when I got into Hofstra, I was just like, "Okay, so I guess we're going to New York." I was like, I didn't get into the first school, and I had like a thought before I even opened the letter, when you're getting all your college letters and everything, and I just thought to myself, you know what? I really hope I don't get into this school because I kind of want to go to New York. And I was gonna go through their New York at the school that I was originally looking at, they had, like, a New York program anyways, and I'm like, "Well, you know what? I'm gonna go to New York regardless," and then everything happens for a reason, and so I kind of just went to New York with the idea that I'm going to be the person engineering things and not being someone that hosts anything or be on air or do any of the things I actually did. Actually, I just wanted to, because I just had a passion for sound design and everything. I went to a technology and arts high school, and our my major that I had there was sound design for video games and web design. So I actually found my passion of audio in general from doing sound design for video games. And I was a musician and everything in high school. So that's why I was like, oh, well, you know what? How can I turn, like, technology and sound and put it together? And that's kind of how I came up with the idea of wanting to be an audio engineer. And then I don't know, the weirdest thing about me, I think, is that I love sleeping to the radio.
Mhm.
And there was a whole entire, probably, I think all of high school, really. I just where I lived was very quiet, and it's freaked me out. I it freaked me out because I would hear, like, the cracks in the woods and stuff like that. And I don't know, but I would turn on the radio instead, and I would just listen to people on the radio all night long. It didn't matter if it was, like, just music or if it was sports or news or anything. I would just listen to the radio, and I loved it. And so it was kind of a no-brainer after that when I said, "Okay, I wanna do this." But me getting into the actual radio station myself and being someone who was, like, a producer of a show and everything, that was something that I never really saw myself doing, and that's what I fell into.
Wow. Um, Prior to coming to Hofstra, had you been to New York? Had you been to Manhattan? Had you been to Long Island, or was it just an idea of what you thought it would be?
So my family, so my dad was from Syracuse and my mom is from Central Islip on Long Island.
Mhm.
So I used to go to New York, like, every summer since I was like 3. And so it's not like I wasn't familiar with New York, but I never been there by myself. Like, my family lived, like, my grandparents lived like an hour into Long Island basically
Mhm.
from the city. So I was really just there by myself technically.
Mhm.
um, and it was nothing like I pictured it would be, actually. I got lost on the subway and on the train so many times. I didn't understand what the transferring thing meant. Like, when you're
Oh.
supposed to transfer, I was told that all the trains go to Penn Station, and that is so wrong. And
Yeah.
whoever gave me that information Like, shame
You
on
should
you.
hunt that person down, and yeah, that's bad advice. But you learned, you figured it out.
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah,
I'm grateful for it because like, now I go to New York and I can navigate everything pretty
yeah.
well, and, it helped when I covered shows, a lot of shows and festivals for, the station for our show, and, so when I had to go to Brooklyn or, like, Manhattan at night and didn't know, you know, where this place was, I kinda just, like, learned on the spot, and then after I figured it out once, I knew where it was and everything after that, and I always encourage people, especially, people in their early days at the station to go out to Manhattan, the city, and all that kinda stuff, because I meet a lot of people who don't really leave Long Island.
Mhm.
And, all the opportunity is, in the city, to be honest. I was able to network with so many people, and you never know who someone else knows either. I met like some person, FIT, and they were doing like some fashion thing. I don't know anything about fashion, but they were doing some fashion thing, and they knew somebody that connected me to someone that actually knew a producer that I was able to interview for my show, which opened other doors and stuff like that. So it was pretty cool, honestly. Now that I think about it.
That is very exciting, and if you'll forgive me for going back to this, I loved what you said earlier about sort of that idea of falling asleep to the radio, and God knows so many of us have done that. But then got me thinking about, I live in a very rural place right now, and there's a particular soundtrack to it. And I grew up in the suburbs on Long Island, and I lived in Brooklyn and Manhattan and Queens, and they all have a particular sort of sound and cadence, whether it's daytime or nighttime. But it got
Mhm.
me thinking about that, and I wonder if once you got to Hofstra and spent time on Long Island as a student and as someone pursuing these things, if you picked up on those soundtracks, if you could hear particular things that influenced you as an audio production engineer.
Yes. And I will say that one of my classes, that I had, it was like a sound design for film or something like that. And we had to recreate sounds. And when I did the projects for that class, you never realize it until you actually sit down and you're listening, like truly listening to
Mm,
things, that you start actually listening to your environment and the little small cool things that are going on in your day-to-day like mundane things, and just how cool it sounds like when you um put it together and you're making like a sound project, like what I forget what do you call it, like a story,
mhm,
like NPR style. I forget the word I'm looking for, but basically, I remember sitting there and just actually truly listening to my environment and picking out different sounds and things like that. And just, I don't know, it just was so therapeutic to me.
mhm.
And I feel like the average person, if you try to explain this, they're like, okay, you're crazy. But like,
Yeah,
but
try explaining room tone to someone who doesn't understand audio production. Until you do it and record something and listen to it in the headphones, you don't understand that every room has a sound to it.
exactly, um, and I really understood, though, the art in it, though,
Mm,
because when you go to, like, see a movie or something like that, you're watching The Avengers, and you hear these really cool sounds, you're probably not paying attention to the cool sound that is actually being taken place, but there are certain sounds that they accentuate and that they remake and they create that aren't the actual sound of like a sword swooshing or whatever,
mhm.
that they're doing it on purpose to make you feel something. And I think that that's what radio has taught me, and just the medium of audio has taught me, is that without audio, you can't it audio just makes you feel all these different emotions that you don't even know are there. Like if you watched a movie without audio, you're not gonna feel the sadness or the happiness or the awe or the scariness of what's going on. But if you were to close your eyes and listen to something, you can really feel all of those different emotions. You can feel someone about to cry, or like you can feel the even the stillness of the sound, like when people just like there's a gap in sound or whatnot, like all those simple things you really don't think about it until we have these type of conversations where we're talking about it. But that's why I really love audio, because it's like the one medium that you can be multitasking and listen to it
Hmm.
and be doing stuff, or you could just be sitting there observing your surroundings. And there's certain sounds that there's like the calming and there's like the calm and stress sounds that help you de-stress,
Hmm.
that they use for even therapy. So sound has such a huge role in our day to day that a lot of people take for granted. And that's why I tell people this all the time that if I had to choose between my eyes and my ears, I would literally choose my ears every time
Wow.
because I could not live without listening to just sound.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I've been sitting here smiling and nodding through your whole section there, that I completely understand, and I see where that's coming from. And I guess that leads me in my next thought is that you said in high school you had these ideas of doing video game sound and music sound and things like that. When you got to Hofstra and you came to the radio station, or better yet, the School of Communications, did you have an idea of what the equipment would be like, what the studios would be like? What was your experience when you first got to Hofstra and saw, like, well, this is the radio station?
I had no idea what the equipment would look like
Mm,
actually. I was just like, I'm going to walk into the studio and I'm going to master this. That was just all I thought. And I actually knew the building like guy that was there every early morning to unlock the doors,
mm,
and there at the end of the day to lock the doors, for the studios. And because I was there all of the time, I knew when people were booking the studios to like do projects, and like I would be in there in between that. I would book my sessions because I just wanted to know the ins and outs of like how everything worked. And sometimes I read it somewhere recently about like true obsession. You have to be good at something, you have to be obsessed with it.
mm,
And I know I had peers of mine that weren't as obsessive as I was about audio, but you could tell in the work that I was doing, and how much I taught myself and knew and everything like that, but based off of how obsessive I was about understanding how all the equipment worked, and how why like certain programs work the way that they do. And and I actually have been able to have an extensive career background in all types of different type of audio now, due to just that one obsession, of being in the studios. But I had no idea what I was walking into. All
mm.
I knew is that I was gonna rock this thing. And yeah, that's all I knew really.
Wow. So I guess once you're pointed in the direction of the radio station, I guess most people have to go through an interview process to get approved to take the class, and then the
Mhm.
class. Did you have to do that, and what do you remember from it?
Yeah, I had to do that, and I was actually pretty confident, in the basics of it because I was a radio major. There was because there's you can be any type of major, to be a part of the radio station. So, but because I was a radio major and I had started my actual radio classes for my degree early, so I was like the youngest person in a lot
Mm,
of my classes. I was able to learn a lot of the things that we were being tested on in the WHU class. So I already knew a lot of the things that we were being tested on. I think the part that really just I was super nervous about was the on-air test that we had to do.
Mm.
And just because I was scared to listen to myself. I'm not sure if anyone else goes through that, but when I first started, I hated my voice. I hated how I sounded, and I never thought that I sounded like that. And I'm like, is this really me? I really do not like my voice.
Mhm.
And and so I was super nervous about that. And then also the fact with the whole FCC thing, I was like, okay, hopefully I don't slip up and say anything I shouldn't
Mhm.
say, but that was the only part that freaked me out. But you learn a lot about also different people who weren't even radio majors who wanted to get involved with the station. I thought it was really cool. My co-producer for my show, she was actually a music major, and she thought she wanted to do something else in music. And what's really cool is that you never really know. I feel like in college, you go to college and you think you know what you want to do, but you don't
Mhm.
really actually know,
Mhm.
until you start doing stuff. And she was able to discover her voice as well through our show that we did together. And now she works at iHeart, in New York City, and doing, radio. So
That's
and
great.
instead of music. So I think that, you if you really take it seriously and take the opportunities that are there, you'll really discover yourself.
So speaking of the training class, and I've spoken to a lot of people who said, it was really tough and it was more than I expected, and the stakes of the radio station were established pretty well early in the class, that this is a serious thing, that we are doing professional level radio and you have to take it seriously. This isn't
Hmm.
just a goof off, extracurricular thing. What do you remember hearing that? Do you remember a moment where you
Yes.
thought, oh God, this is for real?
Yes, and, that's what really sets us apart from a lot of other college radio. Um, and I number one, I feel like I appreciate it more now because now I live in, Naples, Florida, and I hear other college radio stations out here, and they are just kind of like, whatever curricular activity type vibe, like you were
Mhm.
talking about. And, I remember being at WRHU, and, we were set up to be as professional as possible so that when we're going out there, it's kind of like we're competing. When we're competing against like other stations, we're competing against professional stations with people who have been doing this longer than us. And I remember covering a moonrise festival one summer. I went on like a whole festival tour one summer, and covered different festivals for the station. And I was at Moonrise and I was getting all these amazing interviews with some of the top producers and DJs and artists and stuff like that that were there. And we were trained to be so professional by the station that there was people from iHeart and like SiriusXM that asked us what station we were covering for, and they were utterly shocked that we were a college radio station, like
Mm.
because of the level of professionalism that that we learned from the station. So I would say that WHU, like that class, that really sets you up for success, not just because, oh, we're going to be speaking on air, but genuinely like to be a professional in this space.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Um, so you get through this class, you learn how serious it is, you learn the technical aspect of it. I guess at some point you have to pass a test, and then you get on the air for the first time. Do you remember anything about
Hmm.
that?
Yeah. That one, I remember that day because I honestly was so scared.
Hmm.
I was so scared, but I was also, it was a good scared. It was like more of an excitement. Maybe it was more excitement than scared, but I do remember that day. And it was honestly one of the defining moments of my college career, honestly, because I discovered that I really wanted to do this. Like that was like the moment that I was like, I really like I kind of wanted to do it during the class, but I really, really want to do this after that.
Mm.
Um, and so I think that was one of the best experiences that I had, and it was so much fun. And I remember just, because you learn everything from the books and the class, like going over things, but then when you actually put it into practice, you're like, okay, we're really doing this. This is like kind of like, I don't know if we can compare it to being like a doctor, but like you learn everything at school and then okay, you get thrown into the field. So that's when you really become a true reporter, a true engineer, a true, radio person.
Do you remember what show it was, or were you doing a news broadcast? When was your first time on air?
So I actually started, they threw me in.
Hmm.
I told them that I wanted to do an EDM show because they had one in the past, and that person graduated, like, a long time ago, like, years ago before I started, and I told them, "You know what? I wanna bring it back, and I wanna do something different," and, they were like, "Okay," 'cause, originally, I was looking at the news, and I was like, "Oh, that would be cool to do news and everything," because I like doing a little bit of news journalism, but everybody wanted to do news. Everybody
Mm.
wanted to do sports or news. And so I'm like, you know what? I feel like it'd be cool to do something that I'm passionate about. I'm really passionate about music, and there's no one doing electronic music. And like I said, the last time that they had someone was a few years ago. So they told me that I could do whatever I want, and that there was someone else that wanted to do it with me, and that's how I met my co-producer. And so then the first time we were both on air was literally together, um,
Wow.
and coming out with this show, and we did it. I think it was like it was Friday and Saturday night at like 8 or 9 o'clock. Um, but yeah, we would do it for like 2 hours. We had this show, and it ended up being like a big thing while we were there. It grew into being a big thing, and we had like really amazing interviews and stuff like that. But yeah, they kind of just threw us in the wolves. Like we didn't have someone else that was an upperclassman or anything telling us, okay, so this is going to be your one time to shine, and like this is how the structure goes or anything. Like, no, we had full range, and I think that it helped a lot that I also was a radio major, though, because I did know like basic format stuff, um and how to like structure a show. So I just never put it into action up until this point. So but yeah, that was like my first time on air, was doing that show.
Wow, that's pretty wild. When you pitched the show idea, or was put together, who were the people who were helping you do that? Was John Mullen involved? Was Bruce involved, or was it the student leaders who helped you out?
It was the student leaders, and then I think it was John that we pitched it to. Um and he was like, go ahead, go and do it. And then we had to, I remember we had to pitch, like, we had to write a script and everything,
Mm.
for, like, what we were gonna talk about and, like, how we were gonna do the show and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, like, it just as simple as that.
Wow.
Yeah, I know there was probably other people that had maybe like 10 other steps, but that was just what we had at the time. Um, and it really laid the groundwork though, because this we had other students that were interested in, doing our show after we left and stuff like that, and we were able to give them like a foundation to keep the show going. I was able to I personally produced the radio tag that we did for the show, and like just different tags that we had for the show. I produced the whole thing personally, and it's pretty cool to think when I like listen back on them. I'm like, wow, I actually did this,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't sound half bad.
Nice, nice. So were you producer of the show? What was the name of the show? Were you producer, and did you mention a co-producer? Who was that?
me and my co-producer, Kennedy, Cyberman, she was basically like we both hosted it together. She would do
Mm.
1 hour, I did the other hour. Um, and I would produce most of the content. So like the radio tags and like the structure of how the show would go and stuff like that. Um, just because I had a background in radio and I'm really good at editing. And I used Pro Tools a lot because that's what we used in class, but we used Adobe Audition and Pro Tools and just made things happen.
Wow, wow, very cool. So who else was helpful to you in your early days, helping you get comfortable either on air or socially at the station?
Maybe Mario, Professor Mario. He was always like egging me on to do just more stuff.
Hmm.
And, he was always telling me I don't know why that but, like, I just remember him just being so irritating
Yeah.
while I was there, and I look back on it, and I'm really grateful for him pushing me to have different types of experiences with the station, especially at the time that I was at the station because I actually was, a national media volunteer during the 2016, presidential debates that were
Hmm.
held at the school, and, um, and he, like, really pushed me to do everything, like, not just music, because I was, like, super caught up in the whole music stuff, but also getting into, like, politics stuff and news, and I remember I did, like, a little news, feature. It was, like, called Political Youth, and, I had did that for, the School of Communications, and then I also did it, for it to be produced on air and stuff like that, and it was really cool. I think I went to school at a very perfect time because it was
Hmm.
the first time historically that, Hofstra was the only university in the country that's had the presidential debates happen 3 times consecutively on our campus, and, it was also a very, prominent, presidential debating time and everything, so, um, I learned a lot in those days, and, he really pushed me, as a professor within my degree and everything, but also at the station as well.
Hmm. Was there a moment, I mean, that your first time on the air, the excitement and the nervousness and working together and getting your own show, that's pretty great. But was there a moment otherwise where you thought, I feel really comfortable here at the station, or I feel comfortable on the air? Was there a light bulb moment, or did you just know this is where you wanted to be?
I don't know when it happened, but I remember just, like, I spent so much time at the studios, like, in school, like, I've slept in in the
Hmm.
studios at times, and I just would never wanna go home because I really loved being there so much, and I remember just being in the studio late at night, and I was, recording something for this show, and it was just me in the booth and I had my headphones on and I was hearing myself as I was recording and I don't know, it's like that moment where I was like, wow, I think I really want to do this for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
And I just loved being in the room feeling like I'm talking to myself, but other people can actually hear me after.
Yeah.
you know, you never really think about like, oh yeah, millions of people can actually hear you talking, Jasmine. But like I genuinely was just thinking it's just me and the mic, and I could do this forever.
Hmm. That's pretty magical. It's a great moment, and thank you for sharing that with me. That's great. Now, aside from producing your show, did you have any other titles or positions at the station?
No, I just produced just my show, and then I was the president of the required radio on campus and everything. So those are the only things that I did. with the station and everything like that. I had a lot on my plate.
Hmm.
So, but I'm really grateful for the opportunities that I was able to gain from being a producer and also take advantage of while I
Yeah.
was there.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons I'm asking that now is sort of to reflect back on those early days at the station when you were encouraged to join and go for that interview. If you could go back in your mind at that moment as you're starting at the station, what did you hope it would be for you? And over time, being a producer, being involved in all these things, what did Hofstra Radio become for you?
So I started off because I was like, okay, I'm a radio major. Like, I should definitely be a part of the radio station. We're the number one college radio station in the country. Like, it probably looks stupid
Hmm.
if I wasn't a part of it. So I'm just going to put this on my resume. And, like, I was just going to be, fly on the wall. And then it ended up being completely different. I was
Hmm.
very involved, and I was able to help lead the music department side of everything, and take charge with doing a lot of things that other students weren't doing enough of at the time. There wasn't enough students at the time in the music side that were going out there and covering festivals. I was like one of the few people who actually went out there at the time, and started the trend of let's go out there and let's cover Electric Forest, let's cover Electric Zoo. I traveled all over the country
Hmm.
for the station, and let's go into the city, let's cover all these shows, and let's also bring. I had brought producers into the studios at the station as well, like music producers and artists and stuff like that. And I was going above and beyond that, and then what I thought I would ever do. I thought I would be just someone that's just behind the scenes, just okay, we're gonna play a little music here. But but
Hmm.
I went above and beyond and gave more than just let's just listen to music, but create an experience, and also gave educational value to people about the electronic space, because a lot of people just think they hear EDM and they're like dubstep, like, and it's more than that. And I in parts of the show, we really express like how it felt to us to be, at a show, why it is that we fell in love with this kind of music, and kind of help the listener feel what we were feeling. And I think that that's something that I do take pride in, that because you could come into the station, you could just be someone that's like, okay, I'm going to put this on my resume, and I just play a few songs and listen to a few songs and do homework and then go home. you know,
Hmm.
there were people like that. But, the people who went above and beyond and they were like, I want to cover, something for the station, and, bring perspective and do something that, other people aren't doing. That's something that the station really just inspired me really to do. And so I'm grateful for that, because it helped me go out there later on in like my career and stuff like that, do a ton of different things that if I didn't do that, I would not feel comfortable doing that after I left Hofstra.
Hmm.
So I'm glad that I had those. It's kind of like getting in those reps, like Michael Jordan, he didn't become great at playing basketball by just shooting the basketball once. It's the constant reps of doing the action of interviewing and speaking, and being on air. And I discovered how much I loved speaking on air and
Hmm.
talking and everything too. Because I thought I just wanted to be behind the scenes and be a silent type person, but I really love it. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow, what an amazing journey! That's so great. Thank you so much for taking the time to share all this. And I want to ask questions about these festivals and these interviews. Maybe we can get together again and tell some more stories sometime.
yeah, of course. And I really appreciate you, bringing me on this. journey with you as well, with all the alumni stories, and I love hearing how far everyone has come, and just hearing everyone else's stories and times at WHU. It's honestly such a magical thing, and anyone who's listening to this that hasn't been a part of WHU, but you should definitely be a part of the radio station. Just do it anyways, even if it's not even your major.